The plot is thickening. The 49ers had unquestionably the best quarterback room in the NFL in 2025 with Brock Purdy and Mac Jones. Now the question is, will the 49ers trade Mac Jones? They have a price. Those are the reports coming out of Indianapolis at the NFL Combine. And I talked to John Lynch specifically about this. I asked him about this when the cameras were off on Tuesday. And John made it clear that yes, the 49ers did have a price for Mac Jones. Now, whether or not another team will meet that price for a trade to actually happen remains to be seen. But this to me is one of the more intriguing storylines of this offseason and especially of the next few days, because Mac was damn good for the 49ers over the course of the 8 games that he started in 2025. And San Francisco is right now in a spot where, I mean, they're going for it in 2026. They went for it in 2025. They're obviously in a contending situation. They want to make sure that most important position stays as strong as possible unless they are convinced to take a different route. And I think that would be something, an offer would have to come that is very, very lucrative in return for Mac Jones. You know, some quarterback prices in the past, Jimmy Garoppolo went to the 49ers for his second round pick from the New England Patriots. Matt Cassel went from the Kansas City Chiefs in 2009 to the Patriots for a second round pick. And also there was Mike Vrabel was involved in that trade, the coach of the New England Patriots now. So starter plus a second round pick. Geno Smith went from the Seahawks to, it was Cassel to the Chiefs. Sorry, the other way around. Mike Vrabel and Cassel went to the Chiefs. So there was a second round pick and a starter in exchange for a quarterback who had been a backup for the Patriots, but was going to turn into a starter for Kansas City. Of course, there was Geno Smith, a starter moving from the Seattle Seahawks to the Raiders. This was just last year. That was a third round pick within the top 100. So there are several examples, including one with the 49ers and the Chiefs, Alex Smith in 2013, heading over to Kansas City for a second round pick. There are plenty of examples of draft capital as high as a second rounder being sent over in circumstances like this one. Mac Jones starting 8 games for the 49ers in 2025. They went 5-3 over that time. And perhaps even more impressively, Mac finished ranked number 9 in QBR. When I say that the 49ers had the top quarterback room in the league by a mile, I mean it. I mean, look at this. Remember, you want to be further to the right, further up on charts like this. Look where both of the 49ers quarterbacks were in 2025. Brock Purdy up here. It was an elite season for Brock, and Mac Jones is the backup. Efficiency-wise, above Sam Darnold, above Jared Goff, above Lamar Jackson. Efficiency-wise, he was almost at the same level as Patrick Mahomes and Dak Prescott. And you can't walk in and say, well, the 49ers had a ton of weapons. The weapons made it happen for their 2 quarterbacks because they didn't. They had some of the worst weaponry in the entire league. So the way that Mac Jones and Brock Purdy both fit with Kyle Shanahan, it was a dream for San Francisco. And there's a reason why John Lynch has been saying the things that he's saying. And the reason why Kyle Shanahan said that he expects Mac Jones to be with the 49ers next year. And that's because the 49ers have a very high bar to clear as far as trade capital needed to be offered to them for them to relinquish Mac Jones and a very valuable year of team control. The quote from John Lynch at the NFL Combine after I asked him about this on Tuesday about Mac Jones is, he's really good for us and we value that. And so somebody would have to come with something fairly strong for us to consider trading him. And then I don't know what we would do. Obviously, there's always something that would make you do it, but I think we're a better team with him on it, and we just like having him around. And that's, that's another thing. Mac was very, very accurate for the 49ers. He was good under pressure. He performed well on third down. I know that Purdy was otherworldly on third down this past year. He was number one by a country mile over every other quarterback, and that's the quarterbacks down. Mac Jones ranked number 13. He was still in the top half of the league, despite the fact that the 49ers did not have robust weaponry, despite the fact that they went through a mass injury event, despite the fact that they were, number 24 in average separation at the time of catch or completion. He still managed number 13 third down efficiency, better than a lot of quarterbacks in the league that people consider to be good, better than somebody like Justin Herbert, who seems to be crowned year in and year out as a top 5 guy. People should probably calibrate their ranking systems because I don't know if those are exactly accurate. I think production is really important, and both Brock Purdy and Mac Jones delivered that for the 49ers. But on top of the statistical production, Mac was just a really, really good guy for the 49ers in their locker room. He seemed to be front and center in all the boombox walkouts. Everybody loved him in there. He was in that corner locker that Sam Darnold used to have in the locker room. The backup quarterback has had that locker for the past several seasons, by the way, whether it was Sam Darnold in 2023, Josh Dobbs in 2024, or Mac Jones now, because he's still under contract with the 49ers. It's that corner locker that seems to be doing a lot of magic in the 49ers QB rehab program. This is the most important position, and there is no good reason to give away a player at the most important position minus a team-altering return, something that you can immediately use to get better. Now, maybe there's a world in which there's a conditional first-round pick offered to the 49ers for 2027, and I could illustrate that by if Mac Jones satisfies certain conditions with his new team, like X amount of starts, and that team makes the playoffs, maybe the 49ers would be okay with a conditional 2027 pick, delayed gratification, if that is a first rounder. But I think that San Francisco, they are in a period right now where they're paying their starting quarterback, Brock Purdy, a whole heck of a lot of money, and for good reason, because he's at the top of the sport. I mean, the performance that we saw from Purdy this past year was downright special, even after the contract was signed. But when you have a QB1 as good as Purdy in place, when you have A-list pillars like the 49ers have in place across multiple position groups, when you're coming off of a good draft, they're happy with their 11-player haul in 2025, you've got to be ready to go for it. And I think that any trade capital that you get in return, if you do decide to weaken your quarterback room by shipping Mac Jones off, I think that capital has to hit here in 2026. So in a couple months, once you do show up at the NFL draft, you can make the team better for this upcoming season. It would be, I think, really hard for the 49ers to justify capital that comes in delayed as a conditional reward, as a conditional exchange for Mac Jones in 2027. So I don't think that you could have something that is reliant upon how much he plays and how well he plays in 2026 as a return, unless a team wants to tack on something in 2027 as well. But I think there would have to be immediate return here in 2026 for the 49ers to even think about this. But the main point is that the next few days can be very, very busy on this front, because the 49ers do have a price in mind, and they're not going to let us know what that price is, but they're going to let other teams certainly know what that price is. And based on what we have seen coming out of the NFL Combine over the past couple of days, this is going to be a hot button issue moving forward as free agency approaches. Now, other news coming from today. This was very interesting because we knew that there was a court ruling not too long ago that said that the NFLPA cannot release the report cards. Good thing that somebody just decided to leak them anyway to subvert the ruling. So we have how the 49ers scored on the NFLPA report card, and I think that there are some very, very interesting marks within all of this. Let's take a look at the 49ers overall franchise EPA. Thanks to Mike for putting this together. We'll go through all of them. We'll start with the best grades and we'll end with the worst ones, which you can see here on the bottom right. 49ers get an A for their food and dining. I can corroborate that. I've been in the 49ers cafeteria before. They do a good job. So A there. A for the weight room. All right. I think that's better than in previous seasons. Mike, you could maybe look that up. How's the weight room stack up to previous years? But they've got the weight room there right across from the electrical substation, I should add. But it's right there on the practice field in a massive shed-like, garage-like building with a view of the practice field. And you see players dipping in and out of there all the time. And apparently it is popular with them. It gets the job done. Strength coaches for the 49ers, they have also earned an A, so arrow up for them. Defensive coordinator, it was Robert Saleh this past year. He received an A. Higher grade than the offensive staff. Kyle Shanahan, Clay Kubiak, offensive coordinators, A-. Home game field, A-. The 49ers, Levi Stadium is known for having a very, very good surface. I know that they took some time to figure that out after the stadium first opened in 2014, but since then it is a very, very nice natural playing surface. So I'm surprised that's not an A, but it is an A- here. Position coach is A-. Head coach, that is Kyle Shanahan, A-. John Lynch gets an A-. This, by the way, this is an anonymous poll conducted by the NFL Players Association of players. So this is what the players who played for the 49ers think of their employer and of their workplace. A- for ownership. And now we start to dip into the lower grades where there definitely is some room for improvement. Nutritionist, B+, still solid. Special teams, B+. Now, Brant Boyer, I think, made that a whole heck of a lot better than it was in the past. And the 49ers surged all the way to the number 2 special teams ranking in all of football. Treatment of families, that usually involves daycare and the family room that families can use during games, that gets a B. 49ers locker room gets a B. Now, that I think that used to be an A. I think maybe the stadium is starting to show some age, or the locker room might be starting to show some age. I don't go around to many other home locker rooms because whenever I'm on the road covering the 49ers, I'm in the visiting locker room. I can say that San Francisco's locker room seems nice. It seems spacious. They've got nice plush couch seats there. When the Seahawks used it for the Super Bowl, it looked a little bit different because they took some of the furniture out. The basketball hoop was out as well. So the 49ers seem generally happy when I'm in there with their locker room, but it does get a B here. Travel, C+. This is interesting to me. They fly on United. They get a lot of first-class seats for players, the Polaris first-class seats on the 777s. I don't know what the exact complaint with the travel is. Maybe it's just that they have to travel a ton of miles, in which case that's going to be an issue this coming season. The 49ers are traveling, nearly 30,000 miles. It's going to be an NFL record because they have to head to Australia, to the East Coast a couple times. Mexico City is also on the docket. So if it's just distance traveled, well, the 49ers aren't going to get any breaks, and this grade is going to have a tough time improving in 2026. But they could try to make it as luxurious as possible. I know that, I've laid in those United Polaris first-class seats. They're nice, but I'm 6'5", 220 for an offensive lineman who's like 6'6", 300 plus. Maybe it's a little tougher to fit well in those seats. Maybe that's part of the lower grade for the 49ers. We actually need more details. And then the two that are setting off alarm bells right now on social media are here in the bottom right. Training room and training staff both get C-. And that is a low grade. That's the lowest grade that I've ever seen for the 49ers on this NFLPA report card. This is what the report card said about the training room in 2024. Now, keep in mind that we don't get as many details here because the report card was not officially released this year. It was simply leaked. The NFL owners were able to win a court case to prevent this from being officially released. So at least we have this much information. But when it was officially released last in 2024, this is what players said about the training room. 92% of 49ers players felt that they had enough full-time trainers. 94% of players felt that they had enough full-time physical therapists, but only 56% of players felt that they had enough hot tub space, and only 62% of players felt that they had enough cold time space. Many players felt that the training room was too small and that they were restricted in what they could do. So I do wonder if that has persisted into 2025, and that's why the training room grade remains a C minus. But the training staff grade was not that low. It was a B minus in 2024. 88% of players in 2024 felt like they received enough one-on-one treatment. The players felt that the training staff moderately contributed to their success, but the 49ers ranked number 26 overall. This year, obviously lower because the grade has dropped from a B minus to a C minus. And given the mass injury event that the 49ers faced, especially with their star players in 2025, I think that this grade, the C minus for the training staff, is going to raise a lot of eyebrows. Unfortunately, we don't have much more detail beyond that. This was leaked today. I can give you as much context as possible because we can look back at the 2024 grades and the explanations which came out in full, but that really is all that we have. I would, emphasize that at the very top, the 49ers have very good grades from their players, for ownership, for John Lynch, the GM, for Kyle Shanahan, the head coach. And I think that's a very good start for San Francisco, but I think you would like to avoid C minuses if at all possible. And this is the alarming outlier of the report card. As our little summary says, while players value how the team builds strength, they are dissatisfied with how the team treats injury. The C minus grade represents a significant risk to player availability. Now, again, we can't make that connection firmly ourselves because we don't have any more information beyond the grade. We don't have the explanation that we had used to get in previous seasons. So all we can do is look at some of the results. The 49ers have been one of the more injured teams in football over the course of the past few years, and they did suffer injuries at particularly problematic positions. So we're talking about A-list players getting hurt for the 49ers, which is what I'd call the mass injury event. And at the end of the day, it was downright miraculous that they won 13 games, given all those injuries. Now, a huge amount of credit for the 49ers winning those 13 games, and probably the main reason that they did was because of the quarterbacks that they had on their team, which is why this ties actually really well into the Mac Jones trade discussion. 49ers had the best QB room in the league. They had Purdy playing extremely high-level football. They had Mac Jones playing very high-level football. They had the number 2 graded QB in terms of QBR with their starter Purdy, who played 9 regular season games, and they had the number 9 graded QB in terms of QBR as their backup in Mac Jones. Most teams in the NFL struggle to find one QB who can elevate what they're doing as a team, because there are only a handful of guys in the league who actually do that on a year in, year out basis. Well, the 49ers had 2 of those guys in Brock Purdy and Mac Jones. And I think that as we're talking about the training staff getting a C minus and the 49ers going through this mass injury event and the NFC West being the best division probably ever that we've ever seen in the history of the NFL, with what the Seahawks, the Rams, and the 49ers all were able to do. The fact that San Francisco was able to compete and get the 13 wins despite all of that adversity, so much of the credit, the bulk of the credit, has to go back to what they were able to do at the game's most important position. And I think that's why they are so incentivized to hold out for a very, very high trade return for Mac Jones. Now, it's ironic to me that the Minnesota Vikings might be the most likely suitor for Mac Jones, because they've already benefited from the 49ers QB rehab program. They went out and they got Sam Darnold in 2024. Now, Sam was a free agent. He was only under contract for 1 year with the 49ers. So San Francisco got a compensatory pick because of that departure. They did not actually get to run a normal trade with the Minnesota Vikings. But yeah, I mean, you go back and I talked to Sam ahead of the Super Bowl this year, and he's very, very vocal about crediting his stop with the 49ers and Brock Purdy for setting him up for that turnaround. And it turned into something where Minnesota might regret letting Sam Darnold go after the 2024 season, because it was Seattle that won a Super Bowl with him at the helm. But still, that doesn't take away from the 49ers QB rehab effort with Sam, and now with Mac Jones, who was very good early in his career for the New England Patriots. Then he ran into some tougher times with New England. They shipped him off to Jacksonville, and as soon as he was done with Jacksonville, he came over to the 49ers and did what I just illustrated up on the screen. I mean, fantastic stuff. The area where he fell short of Brock Purdy, and I have the statistics. This is actually a cool visualization. I don't think that people cover this intelligently enough. I see a lot of discussion online frequently, even from people who cover the team. Oh, Mac Jones and Brock Purdy were essentially the same performer in 2025. That just wasn't true at all. They were both very good. They both qualified for being very good. But as you can tell, Brock Purdy was definitely a firm cut above Mac Jones, especially when it came to third down performance, which isn't even listed on this side-by-side chart. We can look at that at a different point. And third down is the quarterback's down, but it is under the hood of EPA per play, expected points added per play. You can see Purdy has a massive, massive edge over Jones. Now, what's funny, and I think this is what confuses a lot of people, is that there are some stats here, and they played roughly the same amount of dropbacks, so we can put yardage and pit it one against the other without there being a big discrepancy there. I don't even have to put a qualifier, since I think that Purdy had 4 more dropbacks than Jones. The difference was negligible, but something like adjusted net yards per attempt right here, which factors in interceptions and touchdowns, Purdy and Jones are fairly comparable there, right? 7 adjusted net yards per attempt for Brock, 6.67 for Mac Jones. So I could see how, if people only look at a smaller subset of stats, how they could be like, oh, well, yeah, these guys were about the same. Yards per attempt, 7.6 to 7.4 is another good example. But the reason that we look deeper into the stats, further into the context, like EPA per play, like success rate, where Brock Purdy has significant edges over Mac Jones, like QBR, which is probably the best way to quantify quarterback play, is because we have to look at some of the more hidden performances. I've got a big piece coming up on this on the San Francisco Standard tomorrow, where I make the case, and it's a bulletproof case. You're not going to make a good counter argument to this. Good quarterback play is heavily reliant on performance at the margins that the casual fan often does not register and does not appreciate. So, for example, the quarterback who can routinely take probable sacks and turn them around into small gains that preserve 2nd and 8 versus 2nd and 16, that quarterback may not get the same credit as a guy who throws one 45-yard rope per game that makes the top 10 of SportsCenter, but that quarterback is probably going to be more effective on the aggregate than the one with a big arm who's constantly missing some easy, quote unquote, easy bread and butter throws. Like, a great example of this, everybody always wonders, how does Brock Purdy rank so much better than Matthew Stafford? Because you look at the top 7, top 8 quarterbacks this past season, efficiency wise, you look at the top 7, top 8 quarterbacks since 2022, efficiency wise, and Purdy on both of those lists is ahead of somebody like Matthew Stafford. And everybody's like, oh, well, how did this happen? There must be something wrong with the list. And there actually isn't. There's something wrong with the general media and general fandom watching these quarterbacks and then becoming overly obsessed with counting stats. Like, oh, he threw for 4,000 whatever yards. He must be head and shoulders above the rest of the league. In the case of Stafford, he might have led the league in yardage, but he didn't lead the league in efficiency. And there's a reason why he had a super team around him and still wasn't able to make it all the way to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. He lost to the Seahawks and obviously lost to the Mac Jones 49ers earlier in the season. And it was because there were some areas where he left meat on the bone efficiency-wise. People might have been gawking over a 45-yard throw to Tutu Atwell, but I hope that you noticed that preceding the fourth down stop that the 49ers made against the Rams in overtime in week 5, Matthew Stafford threw a gimme throw behind Kyren Williams. He made his running back slide to catch the ball, didn't set him up for yards after the catch. And because of that, Kyren Williams didn't pick up the first down. The Rams had to go for it on fourth down, and the 49ers stuffed them to win the game. A play like that, it's not going to be all over highlight reels, positive or negative, because it wasn't an interception either. So, but it was a damaging play that cost the Rams a chance to win the game. And Mac Jones, who made all of the glue plays in that game, who made all of the gimme throws in that game against the Rams, definitely not as celebrated on highlight reels, but his team beat Matthew Stafford's back in week 5. And the way that we measure the aggregate of how a quarterback performs at these critical junctures is through some of the advanced stats. And I could show you the rest of the advanced stats, like these ones, where Purdy and Jones ranked really well. Stafford, EPA-wise, obviously higher than Mac Jones. I would hope so. He won the MVP. I would hope that they didn't get the voting that wrong, that the 49ers backup quarterback would be ahead of the Rams starter. But Purdy cleared where Stafford was this season. And Mac Jones cleared where a lot of starting quarterbacks were. And that's why the 49ers were the best QB room in football. You could, just to put things simply here, imagine if Matthew Stafford helmed the 49ers offense this year. It probably would be a lot closer to a 6-win season, a 6-11 season, than it would be to a 13-win season. It wouldn't have the mobility. Not really sure he'd have the toughness that Mac Jones was able to deliver for the 49ers in that system. But what the Rams had was Puka Nacua, maybe the best receiver in football, and Devontae Adams, and 3 really good tight ends, and a top 3 running game, and a top 5 defense. Whereas the 49ers and their quarterbacks had none of that. They didn't have a top 5 run game. It dropped down to number 10 this year. They didn't have a top 5 defense. It dropped down to the 20s this year. They didn't have the top 2 receivers in football. In fact, they were missing their top receiver in Brandon Ayuk. Another one of their top receivers, Juwan Jennings, had broken ribs for a lot of the season. They ranked number 24 in average separation. They didn't have the tight end depth that the Rams had. They didn't have the offensive line that the Rams had. Yet still, despite all of these disadvantages, this is where the 49ers ranked as far as QB play went. You want to be further up and further to the right, and both Brock Purdy and Mac Jones got the job done. So unquestionably, the 49ers had the best QB room in all of football. And now we wait to see if they maintain that room, if they can hold on to Mac Jones, or if they get an offer that is too good to refuse for their backup quarterback. I am waiting with bated breath, but it's about time that the general public and the media recognizes how good the quarterback play was in San Francisco this year. There just isn't enough appreciation of that. I see it all the time with how people talk about Brock Purdy. I don't think that there's enough appreciation for what Mac Jones was able to bring to the table. Although when people start to get into QB1 versus QB2 discussions, they tend to inflate what QB2 did versus what QB1 did, because they always want chaos. That for whatever reason, they want to unseat QB1 with QB2. It's very clear that Purdy was better than Jones, but it's also very clear that both of these guys were excellent this season. And I'm probably the only show on the entire internet that actually tells this how it is. I'm proud of that. I'm not afraid to go against mainstream sheep-like groupthink and bring you the actual numbers and actual performance, because football should be a meritocracy. There shouldn't be handouts in football. You shouldn't get lifetime participation awards. It shouldn't be dumbed down to who throws for the most yards, even if that yardage is padding stats and is garbage yardage, or is helped by the best receiving core in the entire football league. What a quarterback actually produces within the context of what he's working with should mean something. And if everybody else is too lazy to bring it up, then I won't be. I'll work hard and I'll bring you all of that truth. All right, it's been a good day here. We're catching up on the NFLPA grades. We're taking a look at the quarterback situation. Maybe we'll have some news regarding Mac Jones in the coming days. Obviously, today started with a trade. Jermaine Johnson for Tavondre Sweat. Jermaine Johnson going from the Jets to Robert Saleh's Titans, reuniting with Robert Saleh. The 49ers tried to trade for him before the deadline, but the Jets wanted a second-round pick, and the 49ers were only willing to offer a third. I think that Tavondre Sweat is a really, really good player with 2 more years of team control heading over to the Jets, but obviously was not a scheme fit in the 4-3 that Robert Saleh likes to run. Somebody saying the chat saying that the 49ers are the weakest schedule. That's what Mike is telling me. Are you guys kidding me? Who do I have to shut down on this one? The 49ers played in the toughest division in NFL history. By extension, it is not possible to have an easy schedule. This was the toughest division in NFL history. In fact, the 49ers schedule, when you look at all the analytics, actually ranked as a more difficult than average schedule. There's a truth bomb for you. So, I mean, you guys can go with all the false narratives that you want, and you could try to say that the 49ers are an easy schedule. I will shut it down. All of this non-factual stuff doesn't work on this show. That's why more people watch this one than anything else pertaining to the 49ers, because we don't go along with stupid sheep-like narratives. We actually talk analytic truth into what's going on. We actually look at the production. We actually look at how hard the 49ers schedule was. We use common sense. When you see what the Seahawks, the Rams, and the 49ers were all able to accomplish this year, these are teams that, I mean, all of them at double-digit plus wins. This was a great division, and it is literally impossible to have an easy schedule when you are playing in the best division the NFL has ever seen. Like this year's NFC West with that triumvirate, the Seahawks, the Rams, and the 49ers at the top was a juggernaut, and I expect it to continue being a juggernaut moving forward into the future. I am going to have to roll. I got to get to the airport. Got to pick up some VIPs at the airport here. So I got to go. I just got the text. They have landed. I'm about to get in the car. I'm about to head in that direction. All right, everybody, check it out. Hit that subscribe button. We will talk to you very soon.